The term washed up can mean two things in the English language. First, the literal meaning, deposited by the tide on a shore. That's what you see over here. These animals, sometimes objects, were washed up on the shore. Well, it's not really a beautiful sight. Such things happen. The other meaning, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, is an informal expression which means no longer effective or successful. An example given, a washed-up actress. When you go to urbandictionary.com, you have a few examples here. For example, this one says a person who was once great at something is now a shell of herself. Man Tracy McGarty was so good 10 years ago, now he's all washed up. Jerry Stackhouse was such a great player, too bad he's just an old washed-up fringe player now. So you get the idea. When something is washed up, it means that it used to be considered valuable, but now it's considered a liability or a burden. Okay? Look, in daily life, you will encounter the following. That, well, daily life, well, during this lifetime, I mean, but I won't say daily life because you live in the present. In daily life, you will encounter that some people will consider you washed up. Why? Because their core motivation for relating to you or being involved with you was to get some benefit out of you. Once it became obvious that this benefit would not come, or if they found someone else who could provide that same benefit in what they consider a better quantity or a better quality, they drop you because they were never loyal to you and their involvement with you was never about you. It wasn't even that they want to be involved with you, they want to be involved with whatever could provide that benefit onto them. So they were seeking supply. And because you appeared to have the supply, they considered you relevant. But when it became obvious that they couldn't get the supply they wanted from you, you became washed up. You were not important to them anymore. And this is something you need to understand. Worldly people, or commoners, they have this narcissistic attitude in which everything needs to refer unto themselves. Only when things refer unto themselves in one way or the other, whether directly or indirectly, only then will they be provoked to show interest or involvement in that thing. When something does not refer unto them, nor their expectations, for them it doesn't exist. Now the narcissist is very extreme in this. The narcissist even goes so far that they will willfully violate others just to be relieved. And that is what just common people in general don't do. And common people in general even can't understand why the narcissist is doing that. But what commoners fail to see, or what they don't want to see, is that they have that same black and white thinking that a narcissist has. But the narcissist operates only on that black and white thinking, while commoners still have their empathy and their common human connection that they are involved in. Narcissists don't operate in a natural human connection. They only operate based on this black and white thinking. And because they only operate in this black and white thinking, they lack empathy and they lack consideration of others. So, something that's considered washed up doesn't have to be irrelevant. It's only considered not relevant anymore. Because, let me say it like this. If you go to a market because you want fish, then the object that your central object is fish. Okay? So if you see that there are people selling bread or selling, let me say, dairy products or whatever, for you, that's not relevant. Why? Because you're looking for fish. So if fish is the object you're looking for, that means that everything that does not relate to fish is not considered relevant. It doesn't mean that those other things are not relevant in themselves. They are relevant because you need bread. You may need dairy products. You may need those other things that are available on the market. But your expectation is that you want to find fish. So according to your expectation, those other things are not relevant. So relevancy is something that's often created by our expectations. Now you have objective relevancy. For example, food, water, clothes. Those are the basic core human needs for our physical body. And you also have the core emotional and mental needs that human beings have, the need to be significant and the need to belong. Well, those needs will always be relevant. So those needs are objectively relevant because their relevancy does not depend on the expectation of someone. So you have objective relevancy and you have subjective relevancy. Objective relevancy refers to things that will always be needed. For example, the need for human connection will always be there. So the need for social interaction will be there. Therefore, the need for a common language, the need for all those other stuff will always be relevant. But the way they are shaped by a community, that depends. For example, the need for human connection exists in the territory we call France. So the need to speak a common language is also important because people need to connect. So in that territory, they have this construct called French that people speak. If you go back to the south, you're in a territory we call Spain. And the same need for human interaction also exists within those people, but there they use another construct called Spanish. So a Spanish teacher or someone that instructs the youth in Spanish has a relevancy in Spain directly because the children need to learn their native language and how to do it in a way to operate in that Spanish society. But a Spanish teacher in France only has relevancy if there is a job or a profession where they need Spanish. So you have primary relevancy. Those are things that are directly relevant, always like food, water, human connection, and all of that. And you have secondary relevancy. Though a secondary relevancy doesn't have to be subjective, but it's dependent on the situation. For example, the need for a common language is important in every community. But every community has another language, often, or they have another dialect. So the knowledge of some words or the instruction concerning some languages are dependent on the type of language you're dealing with. So you have objective relevancy and subjective relevancy. Subjective relevancy is only related to people's expectations that they are conditioned into. Now, objective relevancy refers to things that are always needed, and objective relevancy can be primary. Those are the obvious things you automatically need, that will always be needed. And then you have secondary relevancy, which is how the primary relevant things are regulated by a society or by a community. Okay? Now, the objective relevancy can never be washed up. So primary relevancy can never be considered washed up unless someone is mentally ill. Secondary relevancy can be considered washed up if the social setting changes. Now, subjective relevancy is a type of relevancy that a lot of worldly people, or say most worldly people in general, they want subjective relevancy. Because subjective relevancy you can control. For example, if you're at the market and you want to look for fish, then you, due to your expectation for fish, you make fish relevant. And all the other things are not considered relevant based on that expectation. And if you have a business and you're exporting wine, then, and if you want your employees to wear a uniform, then a uniform becomes relevant for those employees. Why? Because without a uniform, they can't have a job. And without a job, they can't pay the rent, take care of their other needs. So you made that uniform relevant to them because if they don't have the uniform, they can't get the other things that are needed. But you can also decide, I'm going to abolish this uniform thing, and then this whole thing of uniform is not relevant anymore. Now, if you make a uniform relevant, then those that make uniforms they have employment now because they're now needed to get uniform. Because remember, without the uniform, the people can't go to work. So now those that make the uniforms are now considered important because they need to provide something. So subjective relevancy is what people, for the most part, can control. And that's why worldly people cling onto subjective relevancy. Objective relevancy, you can't control it. It's just there. You need to deal with it. You can decide how you regulate those primary relevant things. That's how you have secondary relevancy. But objective relevancy is just there. It's reality. Secondary relevancy is what we'll do within reality. Because there is no such thing as outside of reality. Even people are fleeing from reality, they're still in reality fleeing from the thing they can never flee from. So, washed up. Only subjective relevancy can be deemed, only something that has been considered relevant on a subjective basis can become washed up. Okay? Unfortunately, common people, they deal with others often on the basis of subjective relevancy. Even though it's a primary human need to have connection with others, in general, world people, they want to control others. They want to control everything. They have this defect in their mind that they want to control things. That is the narcissistic attitude that commoners have. And everyone has it until they're born again and renewed in their mind. This narcissistic attitude is what the Bible calls the flesh. So the flesh is not referred to your physical body, nor to your physical urges. It refers to this narcissistic attitude that commoners have. And that's the attitude God wants us to outgrow, so we align our thinking with His thinking. We'll never get God's thinking because He's a God, but our thinking can be aligned with His. That's what the renewal of the mind is all about. So, whatever situation you're in, always remember that society is a fear construct because commoners want to avoid life. Okay? So, in a fear construct, the primary relevancies, they have to be addressed. Okay? But society itself is a subjective relevant thing because people don't want to embrace God's will. The moment people embrace God's will, there's no need for this fear construct called society. So understand that everything you gain on society's terms will be valued in a subjective manner. And because they're valued on a subjective manner, the only certainty you have is the compliance of commoners with what you have. And that's why everything you gain on society's terms, you need paranormal aid in order to trigger commoners into align themselves with whatever you have. Okay, I'm going to give an example. Let's say you're making music. You're an artist. Let's say a lot of folks can't stand your music. Why can't they stand your music? Because they're not familiar with you. That's how it often goes in the world. When people are not familiar with something, they reject it. But let's say now you get some demonic contract. Please never do that. Let's say you get a demonic contract and your music is now played on almost every radio station. Now, unconsciously, people become familiar with your music. Even people that couldn't stand your music before, they're now forced to deal with your music on a daily basis because it's played at a supermarket, it's played at the railway station. So eventually, they realize that their aversion towards your music is just artificial, and it's only them that will be bothered by it. Because they see that other folks just get along with it. And now, over time, commoners get along with your music. So, with paranormal aid, you now got people so far that they embrace your music. And it will work. But this will only remain as long as the charm is effective. The moment the charm works out, you will see that there is no trigger anymore for commoners to adhere to tolerate or to be open to your music. Then suddenly they turn on you. And that's how you end up washed up. So understand the following. Everything the world offers you, besides it's temporarily because you're in a mortal body, whatever the world offers you is, let me say this, whatever they offer you needs demonic aid to make it work. Now, you don't have to get a demonic contract, okay? But you will have to go to fortune tellers. You will have to rely on pagan businessmen. Directly or indirectly, you will need to rely on demonic aid to secure everything that the world offers you. So nothing the world offers you is for free, because you'll need to get demonic aid to keep it going. And the paranormal can never offer you something for free, because the demonic spirits that make out paranormal, they're parasites, and parasites need to be fed. So everything the paranormal does on your behalf, or every time you use paranormal aid, it will cost you something in the long run. There will be side effects you'll have to put up with. So nothing the world offers you is free. There's always some hidden proviso or some hidden condition that will haunt you in the long run. Think about friendships in the world. What the world considers friendship, in general, implies that you are a source of supply to make someone else feel comfortable. But that means that you now have the charge to make yourself comfortable onto others. That means you need to go to parties with them, you need to watch the similar movies with them, so you need to get along with them. Now, even without this charge, you should get along with other people, because that's what you're supposed to do. People ought to get along with one another. But what the world considers a friend is someone that you can charge to make you feel good. So, friendships in the world aren't actually real, authentic friendships. Friendships in the world are supplies for relief. That's what people consider friendship in the world. So a friend, according to the world's term, is someone that provides relief for you. And if you have mutual friendship, people mutually relieve one another. But that means that you're now burdened with always investing in this relief seeking. And in many cases, those friendships are not reciprocated. So people just expect you to just provide for them. They want a one side, one road traffic towards them, but they don't consider you. And then you end up being used. Such things happen often in the world. So worldly friendships will cost you. Well, some of those worldly friendships are dangerous immediately. For example, if you're dealing with people that are involved deeply in criminality, or people that are deeply involved in the occult, okay, then you know immediately that these relationships are bad. But overall, people don't see that friendship on the world's terms itself is toxic, because God is not free, even though it should be free. Friendship should be free, but on the world's terms, it's never free. That's why there are people that say that they don't believe in friends for life. That is because their expectation of, or what they consider friendship, is not actual friendship to begin with. Friendship is an attitude. But for the world, it's a source of supply. So that's a big difference. Friendship as an attitude, as the word says, and friendship as a source of supply. Friendship as a source of supply is narcissistic. And that is the world's take on friendship. So the world's view on friendship is narcissistic. Therefore, it will only be relevant while there is provision. So friendships in the world only endure as long as the provision is there. When the provision dries up, or people find another source of provision, you become washed up. And that happens when many of you are listening to this. It happens to everyone in this world, but with some it happens more than with others. But friendship, according to the Most High, is an attitude. And this attitude is his commandment, you ought to love your neighbor as yourself, and this attitude ought to be adhered by everyone on the earth, and that's how there is peace and unity on the earth. That's God's will. But the world doesn't want an inclusive unity, because that would mean that they ought to be responsible for how they affect others. That means they ought to be responsible for what they enable or disable. And worldly people want to avoid all of this. So worldly people want unity by exclusion. They don't want an inclusive unity as the Most High wants. They want an exclusive unity in which they control who is in and who's out. So on the world's terms, you will always be washed up. So everything the world offers you has an expiration date that will turn whatever they offer you washed up. This is something to remember. So do not engage with worldly people and expect long-term, permanent relationships. Don't expect that. Now, you can expect when you're dealing with believers who are also born again, because we believers will be on the earth forever. After our mortal body expires, we will get a new body when Christ returns. So we know we'll be on the earth forever. So you can have long-term, eventual permanent relationships with believers. But you can't have them with worldly people, because you're not even certain if they will become born again in the future or not. But forget about permanent. Even on the long term, lifelong relationships with worldly people, it happens in the world, but it's quite rare. In today's world, where people are offered many options, expect to be discarded, expect to be washed up. And it is what I mean. In the past, when people mostly lived in a village and they would spend their whole lives in a village, then you would have companions for life. But today, when a lot of people are traveling, people have social media, people have so many options to get in contact with other people, expect to be washed up several times during this lifetime by other folks, or best expect to be discarded by a lot of folks. This is the perspective you should have. Too many believers, because I don't address worldly people here, too many believers, they still have these narcissistic attitudes that they expect people to just be there for them. And it's nothing wrong with expecting people to be there for you. But you need to look at the context. Those people that expect to be there for you, are they in line with Christ? Are they serving the Most High? Or does God even want them to be there? Who sent them into your life? Did God send them, or did the paranormal send them? Too often we don't look at the context. And that's why we carry expectations with us that make us vulnerable to attacks. Because here's what you need to understand. When you walk by faith in line with Christ, unclean spirits they don't really have much on you. So that's why they'll need to use others to get involved with you so they can get a hold on you. Because when you walk truly by faith, they have nothing on you. Only other people that they can push on you in the hope that your involvement with them will make you vulnerable to their attacks. But when you are not walking by faith, when you're operating in relief seeking, when you have all those worldly expectations, then evil spirits have a lot on you. You get it? And when evil spirits have a lot on you, then for sure they have an advantage already. Evil spirits don't attack, neither are they taking actions against someone that they have an advantage over. That would be the same as a company bashing its customers. A company needs its customers to promote their product and for them to remain in business. So every company or every business will value its customers, because the customers are the sponsors. Okay? So you're not going against your own sponsors. That's very dumb. Nobody in the right mind does that. Neither do evil spirits. So understand that unclean spirits will not attack, will not assault, and they will not go after those that sponsor them. Now, everyone that's not born again is a potential asset for evil spirits. Potential, I say. When people persist in relief seeking, in this black and white thinking, they become an asset for evil spirits. And when you become an asset to evil spirits, it's the same as you being a sponsor of them. So evil spirits will not go after their sponsors. They will go after those that are not their sponsors anymore. They will go after those who are a threat to the grip they have on the human population. So if you are invested in society, if you are invested in the treasures of Egypt, as I would call it, then you are already trapped. And eventually you'll end up like these shoes and sandals over here, discarded, washed up. Because that's what the world does. The world uses you, and when there's nothing left, you're discarded like this. But the world makes you think that you'll never be discarded. The world makes you think that once you conform to society, and once you invest in society, society will embrace you and accept you. It's this false promise of acceptance that motivates a lot of people, because this acceptance implies that you'll be taken care of, you'll be valued, and you'll never be treated as trash anymore. But society is as a narcissist. They promise you things they can't deliver. They even promise you things that they will never deliver, because to deliver it would mean that they need to change. And society is as a narcissist. It wants you to supply for it, but it does not supply for you. It expects you to be loyal unto it, but it is not loyal unto you. Just go to your job every day, loyal for 10 years, or maybe 20 years. You pay your taxes, you're very polite, you vote, you do everything according to society, and let one day you become sick and you can't work anymore. Let's say the sickness endures for a while. Look how society will treat you. Now, if you live in a community where the individual human beings operate in empathy, you will have folks looking after you. Or if you have a small support group within your family. But society in general will not consider you. You're not a good source of supply anymore. You're discarded. That's how society operates. So society is narcissistic. That's why believers are told not to conform to the pattern of this world. Because anytime you conform to the patterns of this world, it is because you want the acceptance of society. And the moment you function on society's terms, you are extra vulnerable to evil spirits and you're trapped. And every free reward you gain from this world will have a plague attached to it. There is no such thing as free gifts from the world. Nothing in the world is for free. That means that nothing in the world is a real blessing. Okay, let me repeat that. Nothing in the world is a real blessing. The only thing the world offers you are null movements, that means patterns and cycles that will trap you. The promise of acceptance, that also implies that you're guarded against violence. That's what triggers people, because they think once you're accepted, you're also protected, and there's no violence coming against you, people support you. That's what folks want. That's why they want to conform to society, because they don't want to end up like the scapegoats. They don't want to end up like the homeless folks. It's this that motivates people, but eventually you are investing and investing, supplying your life source to society, but acceptance never comes. But then you're distracted by criminals, you're distracted by the scapegoats, and because of this, you don't see that you're on a spinning wheel that never ends. And before you know it, you are discarded. And when the discard comes by the group or by a certain individual, you're very shocked and you need to process it. But if you would have looked at the bigger picture, you would have realized that what society offered was a hoax to begin with. It's a hoax perpetrated by violence. Because without the violence, you wouldn't even consider it. Just think about it. If a robber enters a bank and it says, "Here with the money, now." But he has no stick, he has no gun, so he has no weapon with him, and he is quite skinny himself, so he doesn't have heavy muscles. What will happen is they will call the security guard and say, "Security guard, please put this man out. He's mentally ill, he's disturbing the customers." That's what they would do. But if a bank robber comes with partners in crime, they come with a group and they are armed, now people know, okay, there is violence, and where there's violence, people are getting hurt. We don't want to get hurt, so we want to get out of this alive, so we'll comply to secure that we get out of this alive. That's how society is. You have the stick, which is a threat of violence that's used, And you have a carrot, which are the fake promises of acceptance and relief from violence. So they come with a threat to trigger you to go after the carrot, to go after the reward. So you're conditioned to go after the reward, but that conditioning is fear-based, but you don't realize it's fear-based. It's when you are striving to get the rewards, you realize something's wrong. But even then, you're often distracted by entertainment or by the scapegoat that's going on in society or by the news. And it's only when a discard happens that you realize, oh dear, that you were in trouble all along. Remember the example I gave on to you. A bank robber on his own, skinny, with a fragile mortal body, demanding money from the multitudes of people in that bank, that's not going to work. If he comes with a physical advantage they can misuse as violence, then people will take it seriously. But the only reason society is considered relevant is because of the threat of violence, which implies neglect by the community. If you don't comply with society, you can't get a job, people can look at you, so you don't have social contact. That will cause loneliness into you. Loneliness will make you sick. And because you don't have a job, you don't have any currency, so you can't purchase food, so you'll likely end up homeless and die. It's this that motivates people to comply and align with society. But the moment someone, for example, gets a lot of money and they don't need to work, they don't need to do all of that anymore, now that things go very easy for them, is then they will realize that it was a scam all along. And they think that now that they have a lot of money, they're going to be praised. Then they find out that people turn on them. So then they have the reward, but they're washed up with the reward. There is no such thing as washed up in God's kingdom. You are relevant to Christ forever. That's why align yourself with Him and walk in His strength. That's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.